Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to episode 38 of the Knuckle Sammich podcast, the official MMA podcast of Sauce on the Side. As always, Dippers, I'm your host, Drake, joined by my producer today, Mr. Leighton Pip Shavington.
ESPN Plus with UFC is definitely worth the $5 a month.
And the man, the myth, the legend, the voice behind the Knuckle Sammich podcast, Mr. Thomas R. Shackelford.
I have two things for you guys from your Monday show. First one's for Riker. Just because Aaron Rodgers doesn't talk to his family doesn't mean that he's a fuck-up. Probably just means he's smart. And two, we know one other guy who played for that private school basketball team, and he lost the Diocese World Championship by scoring a point for the other team. That was Chucky.
That's awesome. As Dippers, you may notice today, last week I told you that it was a call-in show, so if the audio is more spotty than normal, just, be expecting that for this show. Hopefully we'll be back on the same page with things rolling, all three in studio next week. So today, we're going to break down the card UFC 232, talk about our third champ that we have now seen in the UFC. Leighton C is going to talk about ESPN Plus and some of the awesome things that you can do and some of the good things that the UFC is putting out with that. But before we get to any of that, you guys know the routine. Mr. Leighton C, drop the noise. Welcome to the Knuckle Sammich podcast with Thomas R. Shackelford, a Sauce on the Side production. All right, Mr. Shackelford, let's go ahead and talk about this card that you got to break down. You were on fire last weekend. What was your record?
I kind of reneged a little bit whenever we tweeted out the little card where I do the circles. We ended up only losing one fight after that, and that was Walt Harris and Arlovsky. So basically, we went 1, 2, 3, 4. We went like 7-0, 7-1ish or something like that.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, dude, this was probably this is what we've been talking about. Whenever we try to tell you guys that Shackelford absolutely nails all of his picks, guys, this was just more of the same. I mean, you were on fire that night. I texted you just about how awesome it was that every single fight that went down, you were on top of it. So, kudos to you. Great night of picks. We got to keep the hot hand, though. We have a couple weeks off where we're not going to have any fights, but ESPN Plus is bringing us their first card. It will be the Dillashaw and Cejudo card that we will break down. That's the next one we'll break down. But let's just get right back to things. John Jones and Gustafsson. John Jones basically comes out, and he looks like the man that we had seen in his prior fights. Basically does not miss a beat. Maybe looks better than we've seen him in years past whenever you just look at the third round alone. What did you see in that fight, and are you safe to say that John Jones is still the best mixed martial artist on the planet?
I think he is. I will say I did not think he looked that good those first two rounds.
No, I did not either.
He was getting hit. He was getting hit a little bit, and you could tell it was bothering him. And he was using those teep and those oblique kicks to kind of keep Gus off of him. But Gus was really chasing him. And I think if he cut off the ring a little better, he would have done better. But to me, he was definitely getting the better of the stand-up. And I say that because Jones was trying desperation takedowns. I don't know if you really caught on to that, but he tried several takedowns and just they looked like they were more out of he didn't want to get punched. They were still close rounds because Gus wasn't landing too many, but when he was, you could tell Jones didn't like it. And then the one thing Jones does better than anybody, and if you watch any of his fights ever, when he gets on top, there's only one fighter I can think that's got off from bottom, and that was DC. Other than that, anybody he gets on top of, it's a pretty quick TKO. He's so long and strong, and he's got that leverage. It's can't get out from underneath him. He's still the best. Clearly, he just stopped Gus. He's got a few options to go from here, and hopefully he can pass a drug test and stay out of trouble, and we can get some more fights out of him this year.
No, I agree there. Actually, whenever I was watching the fights, one of my buddies I was watching the fights with, he's like, well, now we got to wait 2 more months and find out if he actually won this fight or it's going to be overturned. So that's really the only black eye on John Jones as a fighter is the drug test, which is pretty important if you were to say so. But we'll actually get to the person who I think may be the biggest winner of the night. Amanda Nunes comes out and stops Chris Cyborg in the first minute of the fight. Basically, they walked out there, started throwing bombs. Amanda was actually able to land first. What did you think about that fight? And do you think that it's safe to say that Amanda Nunes is the greatest female fighter of all time?
She has to be. I mean, she absolutely has to be. She beat Miesha Tate, she beat Ronda, and now she beat Cyborg. Cyborg already had her list of girls, Gina Carano. Really, Cyborg had just fought whoever she could fight, but just even though she didn't get to hit Miesha or Holly or any of those girls, she was still considered the best ever, and nobody was going to touch her. And I actually lied. I did pick Cyborg. I didn't change that before the fight. Nunes, she has to go down as the best now. I don't see any way around it. I mean, that obviously, I think if Cyborg, when we talked about the breakdown, I said she's not that same shootbox girl that does tend to get clipped, but then just bites down on her mouthpiece and mauls girls. She hadn't been that in her last several fights, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because she hasn't been hit like that before, or usually when she goes after girls, they kind of cower away. But Nunes, I'm not sure the punch count, but they really hit each other probably about the same amount of times, and but Nunes there at the end, she kept her hands up high, blocked a couple, and then just ripped one. And it was a nuts fight. I honest to God couldn't believe it when I watched it. I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, oh man, Nunes has got that big right hand. This isn't a great way to fight her. And then I think before I even thought that through my head, Cyborg was out.
Yeah, she zapped her. And, it was... What it reminded me of was back whenever you would watch those videos of this lady who you'd never really heard of, like this Cyborg person who's not even fighting for the UFC, just going out there and mulching people in a minute and a half. That's exactly what it looked like. It was just the other end of the coin for, it was Nunes instead of Cyborg, which I thought was really bizarre. Whenever they first walked out there and started just unloading on each other, I thought, well, this isn't a very good strategy for Nunes. She's trying to do the Cyborg strategy, just roll reversed, and luckily it panned out for her.
Yeah, that was a nuts fight. That's one we got to watch with Leighton. Leighton would absolutely love that fight, that's for sure.
No, it was a great fight. And next on the card, we'll talk about Michael Chiesa, able to get a second-round submission very early in the second round on Carlos Condit. That was one of your dog picks that you picked, so obviously good job there. What were your thoughts on that? And did that fight basically go like you were expecting?
That was one I was worried about. I had a hard time picking, and then at the weigh-ins, just the look on Condit's face, he looked like the natural-born killer. Like, he just had that look. And really, he fought well. He defended a lot of takedowns. He threatened with a few heel hooks, had a really, really, really tight armbar that almost won. But overall, he just, whenever you're going against a guy who's a kind of a grappling, I don't want to use the word prodigy, but a grappling specialist, and you kind of just keep going in that same pattern. Eventually, he's going to work to a more advantageous position, and that's what happened. I still don't know what to say about Condit. you'd said the stat he'd lost is like last 7 out of 9, but when you kind of think about him, he had like a razor close decision with Robbie. He had that weird fight where he tore his ACL with Woodley, and then basically lost due to a torn ACL. And then when he came back, he's had the subsequent kind of like weird losses. So I don't know. He didn't get KO'd. He didn't get insanely beat down. So I wouldn't mind maybe seeing him one more time if he's if he still wants to be there. For Chiesa, clearly 170 is the best place for him. I mean, Condit's fought 70 his entire career, and Chiesa was bigger than Condit. And he's a dude that used to fight 55.
Yeah. No, and whenever I watched that fight, I thought like, he looks like he looks like he's found himself a new home. Like he's not one of those guys that moves up in weight and obviously looks smaller. He looked just as big, if not bigger.
Yeah, he clearly was bigger than Condit, and then once they got on the ground, I felt like probably grappling strength he had a little more. In his post-fight interview, he kind of talked, or his post-fight press conference, he kind of talked, the weight cut, and anybody that's ever cut weight or for whatever reason, when you're dehydrated, your brain's just not there, and he kind of described it as like when he was in those tough fights with those guys that we talked about last week, he just wasn't thinking clearly. He said he just felt like he was in a fog. He was just trying to make weight. And then once he got in there, if anything got hectic or bad or didn't quite go his way, he just couldn't think his way through. And he said for this one, I think he said he sweated out 1 pound the day of. So basically he didn't cut weight at all. He just walked in what he weighs. And he said he felt real clear, and he looked clear in there because Condit had him in some really bad positions, and he was able to, use technique to get out of there as opposed to maybe trying to muscle out and getting caught and then getting tired and panicking and all that. So I'm glad to see him there, and I'm also glad he didn't call out like the #1 contender right off the bat. He just said, "Hey, I'm in a new weight class. I want to fight the number 15th ranked guy, just kind of work his way up." And I think that's best for him,
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm really excited to see all Michael Chiesa is able to bring to this weight class because I think that does make things very, very interesting with the new face there who can compete at a high level like him. Next on the list, we have Corey Anderson. Wins a pretty close decision, a unanimous decision, though, to Ilir Latifi. What did you think about the fight? I think it was really, really close, but Corey Anderson does get the edge, like we had talked about. What did you think about this fight? And are you confident to say that Corey Anderson's put enough good fights together to where we can finally feel really confident picking him?
I was confident in picking him, and it went down about what I thought it was going to. Latifi's, he's a stocky guy. He was a world-class wrestler, but and this isn't any. I think we had a Swedish listener at some point. He's from Sweden, and he wrestled for like the Swedish national team. Not a powerhouse team, okay? But still, he was a national level wrestler, trained at the Olympic Training Center in America for a while. But he's got some serious downfalls. He's got a huge right hand. He can take people down, but if those don't land or they don't hurt, he gasses out trying to throw those monster punches. And Anderson, man, since he's been with Mark Henry, he has looked so good. He's putting pace on these guys. They can't keep up. His head movement, his body movement, his combinations, he looks really good. When I think of guys that I think could challenge Jones and give a legit, true challenge, he is one of the two guys I think of. And there is a third, maybe guy. That's that John. But when I think about at 205, I think you got Corey Anderson and Anthony Smith kind of right there. I think they could pick either one of those guys to fight Jones next, and nobody would be pissed about it. And then you got that Jan Blagojevich or whatever.
Rod's brother.
Who's also had a big streak. I think he might be fighting Anthony Smith next, though. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, whenever you said Corey Anderson may be the guy there to challenge him next, I know that we've talked about it before. Anthony Smith looks like he could give John just about all that he could ask for, and a good opponent who is also lengthy. So I think that would be a good fight to make. Really, I mean, you have 3 horses at that 205 weight class outside of John that you can make the next fight. Out of all those guys, who would you think would be most deserving, or do you think they need a setup fight in order to give John his next opponent at 205?
The way the division is, because they just, they were fighting for a vacated title, I don't, I wouldn't be unhappy with either Smith or Anderson jumping in there. Like I said earlier, I just want to see John Jones fight. I want to see him pass drug test and fight. So either one of those guys that they can get set up, it doesn't matter. I don't even think they need to do the setup fight. You know what I mean? Just, hell, let them fight one of them in March, and then the other guy just kind of hang out till summer.
Yeah.
Just get Jones in. Basically, Jones is one of those guys that. And we all grew up with some of them, just insane athlete, good at every single thing he does, charismatic, but if he wasn't busy, he was in trouble. They need to keep his ass busy. And Corey Anderson and Anthony Smith have done more than enough, and even the young, they've all done more than enough to get a shot at this point. And I think collectively, the MMA community and everybody just wants to see Jones keep busy.
No, I agree with you. Is it... what kind of diagram is it? The diagram that has the arrows like, did you win your fight? Yes. Did you lose your fight? Did you win your fight? Yes or no, and it has an arrow pointing to it. And then, is that a Venn diagram, or is that like a arrow diagram? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. I don't know the name of the diagram, though. I don't think it's a Venn, but I'm not sure.
I didn't pay attention in that day of class, but whatever they need to have a diagram set up for John Jones that's thinking 6 fights ahead for him at all times.
I agree 100%.
That way, like every four months, we keep him busy and throw him back out there for another fight. So another dog that you had actually picked that fought really well, Alexander Volkanovski. He survives a first-round scare from Chad Mendez, ultimately ends up winning the fight. One of the more higher output fights for as short-lived as it was. What did you think about that fight? And did Chad Mendez kind of surprise you, putting Volkanovski on the ropes early in the fight?
That was an amazing fight. That was up there for fight of the night for me. It went a lot like I thought it was going to. I thought Mendez would have a hard time getting in and out. I thought Volkanovski would be able to take his punches. And almost like in the Conor fight against Mendez, we saw Mendez hit him, and Volkanovski wasn't that hurt. We saw Mendez get some takedowns, but then when he was on top, his only objective was to get the takedown. He didn't try anything else. Volkanovski got right back up, took some more shots. He was on chicken legs and was pretty close to being finished at one point, but then he just kind of bounced back, and you could almost see it in Mendez's eyes whenever Volkanovski started pouring it back on there in the second, I believe it was. I don't think he realized how tough that Volkanovski dude was. And I told you I was big on Volkanovski. He absolutely destroyed Darren Elkins. And really the only reason that fight even made it to a decision was just because it's, Elkins. But effectively, I just read on Twitter today Mendez is retired. He came out today and said that he was retiring. So kind of bummed to see him go out like that because it was a great fight. He was in it the whole time. Just that Volkanovski dude, I'm super big on him. A little background on him, he's only been in MMA, I believe, 5 years. He was a really high-level rugby player.
Oh, wow.
In Australia, and during the broadcast, they said when he was at his peak, and I guess he was a pretty popular rugby player in Australia. I guess when he was at his peak, he was about 215 pounds, and he now fights 145 pounds in the UFC.
Holy smokes!
Yeah, so can you imagine the strength and punching power on a dude that walked around his whole life about 60 pounds bigger?
That is unbelievable. I didn't even know that. I didn't know what kind of background he had, and to be a rugby player, I think that might be a first in MMA.
Yeah, it's got to be up there.
That's pretty bizarre. Okay, so each week I always ask you, biggest winner of the night, biggest loser of the night, first on the slate, biggest winner. Who do you have?
It's got to be Nunes. Even with Jones winning, I think with the weird Torrent Bowl stuff, I think that puts a little bit of a black eye on it, especially after we learn some of the other stuff, which I'll mention later about Davinsky being on Rogan's podcast and just trying to explain some things that just made it even murkier. I think Nunes is the winner. I mean, she could never fight again, and she would go down in the Hall of Fame and be considered the best female fighter of all time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the only way that she might have been able to get nudged out would have been if Gus was able to win, because then you beat the GOAT. But with this fight, I think...
If Gus got the win, it probably would have been a tie.
Yeah, no, exactly right. I think there was only one way it could have been. Another person who would have been in a tie. So, biggest loser of the night. I have mine, but who do you think it is?
Maybe for not the reason. I'm gonna name two. Really, there's about three people here. Arlovsky, you gotta throw him in there. He lost an uninspiring decision. Again, he's a dude that you'll throw him out there and he still looks super high level and does really well against a guy like Tai Tuivasa. Then he goes out against Walt Harris and just drops another clunker. You gotta look at the BJ Penn Ryan Hall fight. That was one that I thought Penn could win, and then at the weigh-ins, I don't know if you saw him, Penn could not even look, and then he stood about 10 feet away from him. He looked like he didn't want to be there. He lost to a heel hook. Thank God he didn't get any more smashes to the head. You gotta think that's probably the end for him. And then the last one for me would have been Cat. Did you see the Cat Zingano fight?
Oh yeah, that was really bizarre.
It was a toe to the eye. It cut all the way through her eyelid and scratched her eye. Just the stuff she's been through the past couple of years. And they ruled it a TKO loss. Essentially, it was that'd be like a finger eye poke. Those I think were all really a tie for losers of the night. And some of it ain't their fault. Some of them, circumstances just happen that way, like the eye poke. But in the end, like, you just look at it like, well, kind of where do they go from here?
Right. See, I think I could make an argument, though, that Alexander Gustafsson was the loser of the night. Like,
yeah, you're probably right. That he kind of trumps them all. I didn't even really think about him. Because
if you think about it, the way that he fought Jones the first time made everybody think, oh, this guy could possibly be John Jones's kryptonite. Give him just a little bit more time and let him polish up. Well, now he gets John Jones off of a huge layover, especially if you look at just like how many fights he's had over the last few years. Like, if you're not able to beat Jones now, you're never going to beat him, and you're kind of in a spot where do you go from here? I mean, he can pick up some, higher level 205 guys, but at this point, I think it's safe to say that he's never going to beat John Jones, and it looked like he had his opportunity in the first two rounds where John looked like he was almost coasting, and then, third round comes around, John Jones absolutely pours it on him and just basically eliminates any idea that we could ever dream Gus will beat him.
Yeah, you're right. It's got to be Gus. That's just, he could go up to heavyweight, but who's there? DC's already beat him. He could stay at light heavyweight, and he could probably beat a lot of the contenders that are coming up. But again, what's it really matter if the champ's already up 2-0 on you?
Right. So we're going to go ahead and switch gears here, and we're actually going to have Latency break down the ESPN Plus. They've added the UFC. A lot of cool things to look at. I'm going to have Latency. If you guys listen to the Monday show, he always gives a rating system to his entertainment reviews. So, Latency, go ahead and break down the UFC on ESPN Plus, and how many dips does it get?
Okay, so this is really impromptu. I don't know, I was doing this until Drake said it. So for the past 25 minutes, I've just been researching ESPN Plus and trying to figure out what everything has to it. And it has a whole lot to it. So there are like 5 or 6 different categories of shows. And so we'll start from the top. The first one is UFC Main Event, which all that is the best fights. Like, let's say one example is McGregor vs. Alvarez. It's everything linked up to that fight, and then that fight, and talk about the fight over the fight, kind of like commentary. And then you have UFC Unleashed, which is just best fights from UFC history. And they have probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 on here, looks like. Then you go over to UFC Reloaded, which is full fight nights or pay-per-views. So you don't buy it, you have the full thing.
Oh, it has the full pay-per-view on there?
And from the times, like all the times, like an hour and a half. It looks like they don't have any of the in-between crap either. It looks like what I'm asking for is just straight fight.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Then you have UFC Top 10, which is top 10 title, reign, top 10 views, top 10 slugfests. I watched Slugfest one earlier. Craig Guida, Hall of Champion, absolute warrior, by the way.
Oh, dude, Clay Guida's the man.
Was he even that good at fighting, or was he just really tough?
Both. He was a really good fighter, and he was really tough. That Brian Ortega guy that just fought Max Holloway, he actually, had Brian Ortega not hit him with a flying knee in the last 10 seconds, he'd have walked away with an obvious unanimous decision against Ortega. So he was really, really good, but one of his biggest factors was he was just tough as nails.
There you have this thing called UFC Fight Flashback, which they have fights, and kind of like a more enhanced replay. I'm not sure what enhanced replay means, but probably some technical aspects to it. They only have like probably a dozen of these. The only guys I recognize like Garbrandt and Dillashaw, Woodley and Thompson, one is on here. And then you have UFC 25 Greatest Fights, which isn't just like a 20-minute thing we talk about the fights. It's the entire fight. Like each of these have 3 to 4 fights, and they're all 2 hours long. So it's the entire card, or the entire fight.
And you were talking about the slugfests earlier.
Yeah. Top 10 slugfests.
Top 10 slugfests. So that's for the guys who just want to see knockouts.
Yeah, they'll allow them too. They'll allow blood. These are more blood than there is now.
Oh yeah, people have gotten smarter.
Like and all of these, so I'm watching them, and like they're just in blood. Their white pants are red from blood. Like that's what UFC I want. We need to bring back to UFC.
So if you could, what would you rate this as far as like a streaming option to watch past UFC fights and just keep up to date with old stuff?
Whenever this first got announced, I remember Thomas came on here. He was kind of complaining or kind of talking down about it. I was like, no, ESPN Plus is so much more than this. You got content. You're going to have more sports, everything. And this is a great listen to it. If you're a UFC fan, I don't know what more you want because they're going to keep adding stuff to it. They only have, they spotlight 3 fighters, Cyborg, McGregor, and Holloway. They have 5 fights for those guys. I'd imagine they'd have more spotlights like that and bring in more old fights and more pay-per-views. It has to be 3 dips.
Oh, wow.
If NBA or NFL has something like this, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, no, you texted us earlier and said, guys, this is actually really awesome. Like, if the UFC, or if they did something like what the UFC's done with the NFL or the NBA, people would be losing their minds.
Yeah, and, I didn't say MLB. MLB has something like this, but it's just done really poorly. If you go to MLB.com and log into your account, you can find old games, but it's just really done really poorly. This is done really, really well, and this is a really great thing, and I'm waiting for a day Thomas calls me to ask me, one, how he can get this on his phone, because if you don't know Thomas, he does not have Wi-Fi, and I need your login information because I'm not paying $5 a month for this.
No, I know that's exactly what's going to happen. I give him at the end of this show. As soon as we...
No, out of principality, I won't ask now.
That's a lie.
You know what this sounds like? When he was sending us videos earlier, I cracked up because he's going through them and he's like, oh, this one's called Top 10 Ultimate Slugfest. Probably going to watch that one later.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is Fight Pass that they went over with a fine-tooth comb since it was going to ESPN, and they made it more user-friendly and bunched them up in better categories for the fan like Leighton. Because with the Fight Pass, you can find any fight that they've ever had. However, it's not super like I do. I go on there like I want to see, Nick Diaz fight Carlo Parisi because that was a badass fight.
You have to know what you're looking for on Fight Pass.
Like UFC 41 or something, so I know, hey, I need to go this far back to find these fights. But I guarantee you, if you go on Top Slugfest or Ultimate Wars, that one's going to be grouped in there. Like, you don't even have to mess with knowing exactly what card they're on.
No, I agree. It sounds like it sounds like the Fight Pass, but the biggest upgrade to it is that you don't have to know what you're looking for. Like, it's almost like a YouTube where you can end up in a rabbit hole and watch 50 videos and you not care what it is, where on Fight Pass you have to go into it knowing what you're looking for if you're wanting to get something that you're going to enjoy.
Yeah. I can't wait to watch it. Like I said earlier, I think we should have a night where we chillax and just let Leighton C have the remote and just power through some stuff.
No, I agree with that. I think that'd be a really interesting night.
I guarantee you we start watching Tyron Woodley for 2 hours.
Yeah, no Tyron Woodley fights. We'd be watching 6 hours of slugfests.
I say we go the opposite. I say we do nothing but Tyron Woodley and some old school, like some UFC ones.
We'll spotlight Ben Askren.
Yeah, people love some Ben Askren.
I can't wait till Leighton figures out who Tank Abbott is and Chemo, and those are going to be the guys like Leighton sees UFC Mount Rushmore will turn into from Chuck Liddell. Yeah, Chuck Liddell by himself to now, Rampage Jackson, Chemo, and Tank Abbott are all on his UFC Mount Rushmore.
Oh, that's good.
So, Mr. Shackelford, what little news and notes do you want to hit on in this show before we wrap it up?
Real quick, and we kind of broke it down a little bit last week on the show. I did get some information wrong. That Jeff Nowitzki, who I thought worked for USADA, he actually went on Rogan's podcast like 2 days before the event, basically because the backlash was so bad. Rogan got him on to try and dispel some myths and stuff. He actually just works for the UFC. And he never worked for USADA, even when he busted open the Balco scandal and the Lance Armstrong stuff. He basically runs the program. He's the middleman between the UFC and USADA. So he went on there and just was kind of talking about things. To be honest, he just made it murkier. They're talking about how he actually tested positive for these results, came back in August, late August, early September, and they basically sat on him, the USADA did, for all these months. He also said that John's not testing positive for the parent substance of turinabol. He's testing positive for the long-term metabolites. And when they broke that down, basically they're saying that because it's the metabolites and not the parent thing, that he couldn't have taken the substance recently. But to me, and I think most people, in order for that metabolite to be firing, he had the parent substance in him at some point. So, and the other thing they talked about was why he's not testing for it, and then testing for it, and it's lower, and it's higher, and higher, and lower. Is they're thinking that it causes a pulsing effect in the body. None of it made it sound any better to me. It also came out that Nevada said they wouldn't license him because it was close to Christmas and they couldn't get all their board members together, even though that they had just said that those results came from an August and September testing. But then when they went to California, they did not inform California that he had those test results. So if you're feeling super nerdy and you want to learn what a picogram is and how this stuff's firing, go listen to that podcast. The one big thing that I got out of it, and you guys will understand this, and you'll probably get a laugh out of it. Towards the end of the show, Rogan's like, why are you sure that John didn't take this substance, like a new ingestion since when he took it last time? And he said, well, common sense just tells me that he's not that dumb. You'd have to be the dumbest person in the world to take this substance again. And in my head, I thought, he's never lived around a fuck-up before. If he's ever met a fuck-up or a friend that fucked up or a family member that was doing stupid stuff, that's what those people do.
Yes.
They do the dumbest shit you could ever think of doing, and they do it over and over again. Luckily, Rogan did call him out on it, which Nowitzki still is like, well, I don't think so. But just in my head, I started laughing so hard. I'm just like, he's never been around a bunch of goofy-ass people before. This dude probably grew up in an Ivy League family and went to an Ivy League school. And, he worked for the IRS forever. So, no, he's never lived in any proximity to a wild-ass dude like John Jones.
No, that's hilarious. That he would never do it. It just makes it would make no common sense. Have you followed John Jones in his career, sir?
Yeah, I mean, the same dude that wrecked his Bentley in New York and had a car full of strippers, and then a year later wrecked into a pregnant lady and ran away, and then tested positive for coke and dick pills. Yeah, that guy, no way he would take a steroid.
That is hilarious to me. It makes me think that the guy might not even be from planet Earth. Like, who is this guy?
He seems like a passionate guy. Like I said, he's the dude that caught Lance Armstrong. He's the dude that was sifting through the trash outside the Balco company. Obviously you guys are familiar with Balco, being sports fans.
He was actually in their trash cans?
Yeah, it's just like with the mob. Back in the day, they didn't catch Al Capone. They didn't catch Al Capone for all those murders and bootlegging stuff. Basically, the IRS caught him because they followed the money. That's basically what he did. He was going through their trash, finding, bill of sale, finding all this coded stuff written to Barry Bonds and all these guys, and they just found these specialists in those things and started piecing the puzzle together. And then that's when I believe the National Baseball League had that private meeting with all those. You remember that? They had the private meeting with all those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Told them that it would never get out, and these were sealed. And then when they went to the Supreme Court, they unsealed everything, and you got like Mark McGuire and these guys sitting there like basically committing perjury because they had already told them under oath, hey, I did this, but they didn't think it'd ever get out. And then later they're like, national television, hey, we didn't test you guys for years, and baseball was dying until you started hitting 1,000 dingers a year. Now we're going to throw it in your face. So, yeah, he's that same dude.
That's unbelievable. And for him to work for the UFC, it's almost unbelievable that the UFC would let him go out and just like openly talk on the show, because I just don't think that that's going to give anybody answers that they're looking for. Like, they should have just kept the blindfold over our eyes and just said, okay, guys, John Jones is fighting again, be happy.
Their defense is saying, well, we're doing everything we can to get clean, and John didn't do anything wrong. But the truth is, the test that they used, it's one test. There's one guy that did a test on himself and kept finding these results, and he got his paper published. So these are really theories that they're going off of. And again, unlike his common sense, me, you, Leighton's common sense knows that a wild-ass dude like John Jones, it's way more common for that type of individual to do a steroid to get better at everything in life than not going to do it. So...
No, that is too funny. So anything else before we wrap this show up?
You got to mention the Floyd. You got to mention Floyd.
Yes, I actually, that was going to be my thing if you didn't have anything else.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal from you.
No. Floyd Mayweather, guys, if you haven't seen it yet, just get on get on Twitter. You can find it, no problem. Floyd Mayweather's fight against that Tenson. I don't know exactly what his full name is. It's slipping my mind at the moment.
That's good enough.
Yeah, Tenson's good enough. It won't take you long to find. Basically goes into an underground fighting ring and knocks the guy stone cold out in like a minute. Made like $64,000 per second. Looked like a setup job to me, but Shackelford, you're the fight expert. What did you see?
If you watch that and you don't think Hulk Hogan and Macho Man had a more real fight their entire career, you're drunk. Mayweather looked like Mike Tyson punching me around the ring. I tweeted some guy, Robin Black's got this real funny MMA page where he does these kind of funny breakdowns. I put on there something like, nobody has ever said that Floyd Mayweather punches like Tyson. Like it was an exhibition match. We knew it was going to be fake. We told you it was going to be fake. I don't know why people are mad about it. I guess the only thing I'm kind of mad about is, like you said, he made $64,000 a second, which made me want to kill my high school guidance counselor. But some dude's like, well, who says he punches like Tyson? I'm like, exactly. The 50 guys he fought before, he never.
Yeah, I saw the backlash. They had some Floyd Mayweather stands jumping in on you after this.
Just watch the fight, guys. I mean, this kid's a legit fighter. I've seen fights where they looked like wars, where he was legitimately fighting, and it was back and forth action. And then all of a sudden, Floyd Mayweather, for one, he goes down with a ghost punch, and then tells the ref that it hit his body. And just every time he touched him, it looked like a WWF fall.
No.
Again, though, we kind of called this as soon as they announced it. I told you, don't you dare put money on it. There's no way. It was just an exhibition. It was just a fun thing. Japan's known for those crazy things. It was pretty nuts how fake it looked. And it's pretty nuts that, the greatest boxer of all time, from what he says, had even competed in that. You know what I'm saying?
No, it was unbelievable. And the funniest part was,
have fun while you're watching it.
Every time he'd score a knockdown, he'd immediately start dancing.
It's the wild, wild west.
Whenever he would get a knockdown, he'd start dancing. Like, it looked like a Fortnite battle royale instead of a fight.
Dude, he hit him that one time. That dude, back stumbled, flopped around the lane. It looked like I was watching Dragon Ball Z. It looked like Goku got punched by Vegeta when Goku and Nappa first came down to Earth. That's what it looks like.
That's actually a phenomenal comparison. Any other little news and notes that you'd like to hit on before we wrap this up?
No, man. We got a little bit of a break. Maybe we can squeeze in a guest next week if we can find one wanting to come on. But some really crazy good fights this past week. Maybe next week if not a guest, we can scooch over there and watch the Ultimate Slugfest.
Oh, yes. The Ultimate Slugfest will be on. And on that note, for Drake, for Mr. Shackelford, and our producer, Leighton C., Dippers, as always, stay saucy.